We spend so much time talking about the guys at the top of the quarterback market, the superstars, what their contracts look like, that we don't really spend that much time thinking about the stakes involved for guys at the second level or even the third level. And that brings me to the next guy I want to talk about here. And that's the start that Josh Dobbs has had in Arizona. This is a guy who was bouncing around different practice squads over the last few years, got waived by the Browns last year the moment Deshaun Watson came back from suspension, ends up landing with Tennessee, starts for them in a playoff game, goes back to Cleveland this offseason, and then gets traded on the eve of the season to the Cardinals, a team we think is going to be the worst team in the NFL, to be their starter. And it could just be so easy to look at that, just be like, he's an end of the roster guy. Like, who knows? Who cares? It's Josh Dobbs. Does it really matter who's playing quarterback for the Cardinals? But the way that he's playing right now, he's potentially setting himself up for a completely different act, the completely different third act of his career. And I'm sure you know a lot about that. As somebody who wasn't a longtime starter, you're really just trying to make the most of your opportunities. So when you're in that spot and you kind of know, I'm not going to get that many chances to play, but I have to do everything I can to kind of breathe life into the second, third, fourth stage of my career. What is that like as a player as you're trying to kind of make your way in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, his is like, I mean, Josh Dobbs, I mean, I do think he's playing exceptional. Like,
he's
thrown
been
for
great.
900 yards and 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And and he's honestly like a little bit of a different guy. Like, he's very out there. He's got TikToks. He's got like, and usually you don't see that from starting quarterbacks, but ultimately at the end of the day, he's just himself. And that's what he believes in is himself. And I was impressed with how he played last year with Tennessee. And then when he got traded from the Browns to Arizona, I was like, well, okay, he's probably going to start, but like, how's he going to do? And then he's just like steadied the ship. And not only steadied the ship, he's made throws, he's made plays, he's made Arizona in all of these games really at one point or another that they played, other than a few. And so when you look at a guy like that, like, I have a very high admiration level for them, because a lot of people don't know like all the stuff that he and his journey is even different than mine, because my journey, like, I was undrafted and then honestly like spent 4 years with the Saints, okay, and won the backup job and signed a very, very nice deal in my first year in free agency in Kansas City with Andy Reid. And then from there on, the rest of my career, I was sort of always like the unquestioned backup of the team, and one of the better ones, at least I hope, in the league. Where Josh has been like in and out. He's been on a bunch of different teams. He's been the third string. Now he's been the starter, and it's just like he's balling. That's why the crapshoot of the position of, like, you take, for instance, Brock Purdy, right? Mr. Relevant, okay? Or like, and then you take Zach Wilson, who was the number 2 overall pick. It's just like, who would you rather have? Brock Purdy. So like, this is a Josh Dobbs type scenario where it's like, hey, dude, you're not only playing well for your team now and making a name for yourself, but ultimately, like, the next, he could play, he's 28, right? He's 28. He could play for the next 8 to 10 years as a backup and make $2 to $5 million a year. Like, it's setting him up for life. And now he's smart and probably would do something, make way more money with NASA and all that jazz. But I think it's such a cool story, because there's not a lot of these stories that happen like this, where you just get a guy who had been just okay, and then all of a sudden, just let him play, let him build his confidence, let him get stuff going. And that's the coolest thing to me, is like, I've been in a position where you're just trying to make it. And then once you make it, okay, cool. It just builds even more confidence, and your name gets out there, and you're well-liked around the team and ultimately around the league. And then it also just ups your ante for free agency. Like, hey, just Josh Dobbs guy, he can come in and not only like back up somebody, but he can go in for a stretch and win games.
He goes to Cleveland, where Drew Petzing was their quarterback's coach last year. He is now the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals. That's how the connection gets made. So that little stint in Cleveland and what he showed there, and his grasp of the offense, I'm sure, was the reason they brought him in Arizona. Yeah. And now you have this offense in Arizona that's just vastly outperforming expectations, and it's actually pretty damn fun to watch.
Yeah,
like, you watch what they're doing, it's like, it's nothing crazy, but it all makes sense. Guys are going to the right spots. You understand what the plan is. They have third down calls where it's like, oh, that was nice. Like, they had a play against the Niners. It was 3rd and 7, I think. And the Niners were playing man coverage. It was a little bunch to the right. And just like how thoughtful the route distributions were, and the stems that guys were taking. Marquise Brown runs a little crosser. Dobbs hits him, nice little 2-yard completion, runs for a first down. And it's simple football, but it's like, this is just good. Like, this is just well done.
Well
So
coached.
exactly. And so he lands with this coach who's putting him in the right spot. And now he's a guy who has made $7.5 million since he was drafted in 2017. Those are his career earnings. There is a chance if he keeps playing like this for the rest of the year, we get to free agency next year and he makes close to $7 million a year on his next deal. Yeah. Look at the contracts that are out there. Heineke got $7 million a year to go to Atlanta. Jacoby Brissett got $8 million a year for his 1 year in Washington. Jarrett Stidham, Marcus Mariota, Mitchell Trubisky, they're all making $5.5 million a year. So we don't spend a lot of time talking about this group of players in the NFL. But when you've had the career up to this point that Josh Dobbs has, there is a very real chance that he is having a life-changing, life-altering sort of season right now with the Cardinals.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And you look at those guys like Heineke, Brissett, Jarrett Stidham, Mariota, Trubisky, and you look, and he's playing just as well as those guys played, right? And but he's getting to do it on the field in actual game action. Whereas these guys, Heineke did it last year, of course, but Brissett, Stidham, Mariota, they had some games here and there, but not 4 in a row. And you might end up playing the rest of the year. You don't know what's going to happen with Kyler Murray. And I think it's a cool story. Like, if anything, he's helping his case in Arizona. Like, hey, like, until we find a new guy, if Kyler's not the guy or whatever happens, or, like, let me be like, so it's not only like setting him up for life, but it's setting him up to be able to start different places. Like, I think if he continues to play this way, there's going to be a team that's going to give him $7 to $10 million. Hey, come in and be a bridge guy. And then it's another chance to be like, okay, cool. I played that. Let's go to the next. And it's just like, that's the cool thing about watching this happen, is because I know the behind the scenes of everything going on. And he's got to be extremely happy and extremely confident with the way he's playing.
It's funny, the parallels with the Jacoby Brissett situation. He was the stopgap quarterback in Cleveland, let's call it that, in this offense for the same coach. He was the quarterback's coach, and obviously Kevin Stefanski is the play caller, but it's a very similar situation. So if you want to make some money as like a premium backup, go play in this Brown sort of system that these guys are running right now.
Seriously.
So I'm curious, as somebody who's lived this life before, one, when did you kind of know, all right, I am going to have a long career as a backup in the NFL? What was the moment that it kind of clicked into place where you were like, for whatever reason, the league, not for whatever reason, I know you earned it, but okay, the league has determined that I am worth this sort of standing. Like, I have job security, even if it's as a backup for a long stretch.
Man, that is a really great question. And it just takes me back. So obviously was undrafted Washington and then signed with New Orleans. And once I signed with New Orleans, I learned under Mark Brunell, Drew Brees. And then my second year, they brought in Patrick Ramsey, and they weren't going to sign Brunell back. And obviously I was under contract. So they're like, hey, we're going to let you compete for the backup job. I don't think there was like any indication. Like, when you bring in a vet like that, Patrick Ramsey at the time was playing well and played for a while. It was like, all right, cool. Like, nothing to lose, like, go out and play. And then all of a sudden I just was playing really well in camp and had like a monster 2010 preseason. And I'll always remember, like, it was we don't get those 3 days before cut down day or after cut down day or whatever, but it was like almost like you were in the building during cut down day, which is the absolute worst. And so you're like, Sean Payton made us do a workout, like at the whole team workout, like 90 guys, I think it was like 75 guys, and we're cutting 20 of them. And so I'm in the workout and I'm just like, man, I'm trying to figure out, like, all right, am I going to go bench press? Am I going to do like, and I just can't think. Like,
you're looking over your shoulder the entire time, like you're half benching, but in actuality, you're just like, where's my phone going to ring?
I'm just like looking like that. It's not even the phone, dude. That's the worst thing. They call it the Grim Reaper, man. It's the guy who cuts everyone. And so I'm looking around, he's coming in, dude. It's like the worst thing ever. I can't, like, it's like he's pulling guys out, and I'm on one of the machines, and it's all the quarterbacks lifting. I think Ramsey was lifting with us and went to the bathroom. And I just said to Drew, I was like, dude, like, what, like, tell me, you have to know, like, what is going on, bro? Like, he's just like, don't worry about it. I'm like, no, I'm gonna worry about it, because I'm
really worried about it.
Like, legitimately worried, because this is like, you're messing with my life here. He sort of gave me a wink, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, I'm still getting chills about it now, because that was sort of the start. And then so that was cool, was the backup for 3 years. And then My first, I think it's just like my first crack at free agency in 2013 when I ended up signing with, John Dorsey was the GM. Andy Reid obviously was the head coach for the first year. They traded for Alex, and the next thing they wanted me, and I was just like, wow, like everyone knows about the prowess of the quarterback position and what it's coached like with Andy Reid, and I was just like, wow, like that's wild to me. Like Andy wants me. So we ended up signing like a 3-year, $10 million deal in 2013, which 3.5 APY back then was like amazing. And I had not even started a game. It was all off preseason film and what I was like. And so that was cool. But I think it's a long-winded question because you're taking me back here, and I sort of like it. But I feel like in 2015, after my 3 years with the Chiefs, like I started playing really well. I really felt like I am the best backup in the league and I could be a starter. And that was the year 2016, the big, huge contract with Philadelphia. And so I think even that long, that's like 7 years into the league before I felt like I was really like, okay, I belong. And so it's just, you never know. And it's what Dobbs' 6th year in the league. So he's getting to a place where he like really feels probably he belongs.
You took that kind of premium backup fringe starter contract in Philadelphia, and then they drafted Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
In that moment, is there disappointment? Is there kind of an understanding, I knew this was potentially going to happen? Like, walk me through draft night or the moment that you found out when that was actually going to happen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we could spend the whole show talking about this. But it was when I signed the contract with Philly, it was a 3-year, $21 million deal. It was the richest backup quarterback deal by far at the time of in NFL history. And it not only was a backup, but I was told, my agent was told, hey, we're going to let you compete with Sam Bradford. I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, because it was Doug Peterson. He was my guy. They were new offense. Like, I'm like, awesome. And so the first couple days we rotate reps. I'm like, oh, this is really happening. Like I get the ones one day, he gets the ones, and playing well. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, now you're just the twos. I'm like, okay, like something's wrong, whatever. And then it was just like a weird situation. And man, okay, I've never told this story. It was a weird situation. And when they drafted Carson, was it 2 or 3 overall?
It was 2 overall, but they had made a move halfway up the draft.
Yeah.
So they made that move halfway down. They were like picking at 15. They went to 8. It was that deal that they made with Miami.
Yep. And as soon as that was happening, I was like, all right, they're taking a quarterback. Fine. So Carson comes in. He's the third quarterback. He takes all the 3 reps. I take all the 2 reps. Sam takes all the 1 reps. And Carson broke his rib or hurt his rib in like one of the first preseason games. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm good. Like he's out for a few weeks. Like I'm good. Like great. All right. And then all of a sudden, so we're in that weird time frame where it's cut down day, but we're not in the facility. My wife and I had driven up from Philly. We lived in Jersey. We drove up an hour and a half to New York City, and we're going to do a staycation in New York City. We didn't have any kids at the time, and we were staying at the hotel. I remember this. We get in on like a Thursday, and we have to leave Saturday morning. We get in on a Thursday, and everyone all of a sudden, like for 10 minutes, it's like 4 p.m. on cut down day. For 10 minutes, my phone starts blowing up. And I'm like, what is happening? Like Hillary's like, oh my God, Chase, they just traded Sam Bradford. They just traded Sam Bradford. It was
like a week after the Teddy Bridgewater injury had happened. It was Labor Day weekend. Yeah.
And we were in New York, and my wife's like, oh my gosh, like Adam Schefter's saying, like, you're the starter. Like, have you talked to Doug? Like, what's happening? Like, and then all of a sudden, Doug calls me. Like literally as news is breaking, I'm like, oh, sweet. Like, this is awesome. He's calling me to tell me I'm the starter. And he called and was like, hey, man, listen, here's the deal. We traded Sam. And, in a roundabout way, we're going to move forward with Carson as a starter. I know what we had said, but we just feel strongly about Carson. I was like deflated. I was just like, man, like this is the one chance that I had to become a starter, and the team didn't believe me, which, listen, I get it. Carson went on in 2017, should have won the MVP. They won the Super Bowl. I get it. Like, I'm not saying that, but it was just an interesting way of how things had happened and how people find out. Is like, okay, for 10 minutes of my life, I was like, I finally get a chance to be a starter. And then Doug calls like, hey, we made the decision. Okay, I get it. Like, listen, I get it. But it was deflating. because I'm not like one to be like, hey, I deserve that chance. I deserve that chance. I was just hoping for the chance, and it didn't come. It is what it is. But it was a crazy. I mean, it was a crazy like couple weeks for sure when that happened.
How do you think about it now? Do you still think about it? Are you happy with the way that everything kind of unfolded from there? There's still a part of you that wishes you had gotten that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like that's the thing. I've made so much peace with the fact that I started 5 or 6 games in my career, and I've made so much peace with it that like, hey, dude, your chance never came because I mean, literally, like, there's no starter that got hurt for a long period of time. Like, I played behind really healthy starters and good. Like, you never wish injury to happen. And I'm really happy with a 14-year career, but definitely always like it'll always be like, man, like I just wonder, not really like holding it against people, but I just wonder what I would have been able to do if I would have gotten 6 to 8 games in a row to start and just really build on practice. Cause I was always starting like one game here. Hey, the Thanksgiving game, the Thanksgiving Day game against Detroit when I was with Chicago, I had like 40 hours to prepare as a starter, like no reps, went out, balled out, played well, got a win, national TV. The Minnesota game that I played most of the game, Mitch got hurt in the game. So like there's not been a lot of these where you've gotten like 2 full weeks of practice to just sort of get into a rhythm. So I just always wonder like how would I have handled that, if that makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense. I mean, I'm sure there's a push and a pull of like, I'm very lucky, made a lot of money, got to play in the NFL for a long time. But at the same time, people are competitive. You know, you want to see what you can actually do in those circumstances. So I totally get it. I remember that third Thanksgiving game. I was watching it we do Thanksgiving in Miami every year. My wife's family is from there, and I always have to go to like a sports bar a little bit early because the drive to dinner is like an hour and a half. And the Bears 2 years in a row played that early game on Thanksgiving,
like 11:30. Yeah,
I'm sitting there on Thanksgiving in this like smoke-filled, just terrible sports bar in like near Fort Lauderdale, watching you light up the Lions. It was, for whatever reason, that will be burned into my brain for a long time.
That's hilarious, man. That's awesome.